Good morning. I wanted to call this press conference to address several incidents that happened in the Baton Rouge area on yesterday. Um, there are four incidents specifically that I want to speak about where our Baton Rouge police officers as well as the sheriff's office responded to shooting incidents in the city of Baton Rouge and within the parish. On October 15, 2020, at approximately 20 hours, BRPD uniform patrol officers responded to a shooting incident at 3637 Osceola Street. Upon their arrival, responding officers located a male victim suffering a non-life-threatening gunshot wound. Our Major Assaults Division was contacted and responded to the shooting scene. Detectives contacted the victim, who advised that a family member by the name of Miles kicked in the front door of the residence. Miles entered the residence without authorization and got into a physical altercation with the victim. Miles produced a handgun and shot the victim. That subject is identified as Kendrick Miles, date of birth 4/25 of 1979. While investigating the Osceola shooting incident, detectives learned that the East Baton Rouge Sheriff's Office was investigating a kidnapping incident on Bluebonnet Boulevard. Miles was identified as a suspect of kidnapping a minor child who is also a family member. The Baton Rouge Police Department uniform patrol officers then responding to a shooting incident on 6095 West Upland Avenue. Upon arrival, officers discovered a suspect, Miles, had fired multiple times inside the residence. A juvenile was struck by the gunfire and succumbed to the injuries, 2 years old. Our Baton Rouge Police Department uniform patrol officers responding to another incident, a shooting incident, at 1431 Snipe Street at approximately 21:51 hours. Upon their arrival, responding officers located a male victim who advised that Miles, who is a family member, fired multiple gunshots at him. The Major Assault Division was contacted and responding to the scene. Baton Rouge Police Department Uniform Patrol Division, our K-9 Division, our Aviation Division, our Special Response Team, along with the East Baton Rouge Parish Sheriff's Office responding to that scene. We secured it. After several hours, to about 2:45 in the morning, I believe it was, we were able to take Miles into custody and locate the kidnapped minor child, who was safely returned to his family. So that's four incidents: kidnapping on Bluebonnet Boulevard that the EBR Sheriff's Office is investigating, the 3637 Osceola Street, 6095 West Upload Street, and also 1431 Snipe Street, all incidents involving one suspect. Each one of these cases was thoroughly investigated, and probable cause was established to charge Miles with the following crimes: first-degree murder, 6 counts of attempted first-degree murder, attempted second-degree murder, illegal use of a weapon, 3 counts, possession of a firearm by persons convicted of certain felonies, 3 counts, home invasion, and Miles was also arrested as a fugitive for warrants by the Baton Rouge Fire Department for an arson that had occurred, and also for kidnapping by the EBR Sheriff's Office. I want to highlight the great work that our detectives did. Our detectives are still working these incidents, these shooting incidents, as we speak. And the coordinated effort and how expeditiously we worked this case alongside the Sheriff's Office, and how they were able to connect the dots to these incidents, it makes us proud to see how we coordinate with the Sheriff's Office. So I'm going to ask Todd Morris, who's here, to speak briefly on that.
Thank you, Chief. As the chief mentioned, we responded to a alleged kidnapping incident off of Blue Bond on Ridge Point yesterday around 9 o'clock or so. And very quickly in this investigation, we had information that, a minor child had been abducted by a family member. We talk about domestic violence, we talk about the violence in our cities, and here's another prime example of a domestic violence issue that has turned from a kidnapping to a shooting to the unfortunate death of a 2-year-old. And that's a prevalent issue that's taking place in our city and around the country, unfortunately. But very quickly on the investigation, our detectives from the sheriff's office realized that the Baton Rouge City Police was working a shooting also that had some vehicle description that matched ours, and they very quickly connected the dots and realized we were looking for the same suspect. And that's very important because our resources are pulled together, working jointly. We're following up on that information, sharing that information in real time very quickly within just a matter of a couple of hours. All these were connected together and realized we were looking for the same person, and we were joined together and work expeditiously together by sharing that information and working together to bring this person to justice quickly. And we're very fortunate that the other juvenile child was returned to his family safely and unarmed, and that's the main thing. He was unharmed. And so we're very fortunate that, and we just thank the good Lord for that. And we appreciate our partnership with our local law enforcement agencies that we have here, not only with the city, the state, but everyone here. And it requires us working together, but not only us, it requires the citizens to help us do this. We can't do it alone. And we appreciate the work that the citizens help us with in sharing information. It's a collaborative effort from our whole community to be successful as we are. Chief.
Thank you, Todd. When I see, because we work side by side with the sheriff's office every day, and we see the great work that our detectives are out there doing, and sometimes we don't give them the praise that they deserve, particularly when you look at, we're above the national average when it comes to our clearance rate on homicides. And when you go on these scenes, I know the mayor and I was out last night at the hospital meeting with the family of the 2-year-old who was murdered, beautiful soul. And when we're out there and we're trying to find comforting words, it's hard. But I'm reminded that our detectives see that every day. I want you to think about that. That's what they do. They see that every day, that trauma. And I can tell you, as the chief, it's hard. And they still have to investigate these crimes, still have to manage those emotions on the scene. So I just want to commend our detectives for the great work that they do. But you see this picture behind me. He's in jail. He's going to be charged. He has been charged with all of the crimes that I mentioned. But what I'm reminded of when I'm sitting in every week, we have a commander's meeting where I sit around with all of my captains from around the district, conference calls with our law enforcement partners in the community and the sheriff's office. In every meeting, we start off with prayer. That's how we start our meetings off. And we pray for the community. We pray for our officers. We pray for peace. Every meeting, that's how we start our meetings off. And we started that, and some may criticize us for it, but it's okay. It's okay. But the reality is, what I hear in these meetings from my street crimes supervisors, Chief, we're dealing with the same people over and over and over again. The same individuals. We dealt with this guy before. I believe it was in 2004. You can Google it. He was, I believe it was 11 accounts of first-degree murder. The article was where we tried to serve search warrants where he shot into a house. We dealt with him before. The same individuals. That is what I hear from my officers. We arrest them, and then we have to deal with them again. Shooting incidents, murders. What's right about that? Look, our police officers are doing their job to get these bad actors off the streets. The advocate is here. You hear y'all run the stories. Y'all see their criminal histories. You know, that's one of the reasons that we're leaning heavily on our federal partners with our National Public Safety Partnership to help us and with the strategies that we have to reduce gun violence, from our crime gun intelligence center, from our task force efforts where we are asking them to strongly consider federal charges on these repeat offenders. And that's why we're leaning heavily on it, because we are tired of seeing the same individuals. This is what I hear from my officers. We have to do better than that. But when we look back at not only this incident involving this criminal who took the life of a baby, when we look back at his history and all of the incidents that I just mentioned, what we're going to learn is that there were opportunities for intervention. There were opportunities. And when you hear us talk about these strategies that we're putting in place, community involvement is critical. It's very critical if we're going to address violence. Crime is a socio-economic issue, and the police department cannot do it alone. And all the strategies you hear me talk about, sitting right here in this real-time crime center and all of this data that we use to target that small group of individuals, from the Crime Gun Intelligence Center, where we are expediting shots fired incidents, and a team is responding to that along with ATF, working with the State Police Crime Lab and the District Attorney's Office. Yes, that's happening. From our PSP patrol strategies that are being coordinated right here in this real-time crime center, where we are seeing some success in 20% reductions in those areas where we have those targeted patrols. With all of those efforts, our community service efforts, all of those efforts, still we are here today talking about shooting incidents. And the story begins to be the same. It's the same story. Somebody somewhere in that person's inner circle knew something where they could have picked up the phone and called law enforcement to prevent that shooting from happening. Somebody in this person's inner circle, a loved one, a friend, a relative, a girlfriend, an uncle, an aunt, could have picked up the phone and called another concerned person. They could have called a faith-based leader. They could have called a community. They could have called someone to help interrupt that cycle of violence. Baton Rouge, we can do better. And the reason why we know, because there are success stories. We have stories of the mother who knew that her son had beef or conflict, whatever word you want to use, with someone, and she decided to call someone to help de-escalate that dispute that they had. There's a preacher out there, a community leader out there. There are violence interrupters out there. But they can't help unless you pick up the phone and call. In this same building, we just had a press conference at the beginning of October where we talked about domestic violence and how we've seen increases in domestic violence, and we provided resources to say, hey, pick up the phone and call. And here we are again talking about more domestic-related homicides. Over 600% increase in domestic, actually 700% increase in domestic violence, intimate partner homicides in our city this year. Baton Rouge, as I stand here right now, our detectives on North Ardenwood, where we just had another homicide. As we stand here, our detectives, the same ones who were out last night, putting the pieces of the puzzle together to get this criminal off the street, they're right now on the scene of another homicide. So our police officers are out there working, and we're doing our part. And we're going to continue to ask the community to help us in those efforts. We have 27 police officers that graduate from the academy in a couple of weeks, on November the 2nd. We have another academy after that, and we also are going through backgrounds for our next class to fill those around 80 vacancies that we have in the police department. So we have more police officers coming. But I wanted to thank, because one of our city councilmen came and wanted to show support, and I appreciate it. I'm going to ask her to step up and say a few words.
Good morning. Thank you, Chief, for the opportunity, and thank you guys for being here. I just wanted to come out and say to the community this morning, Baton Rouge, we are better than this. And we have to be as outraged about this situation as we are about any murder in our city. There's no difference. This mother's heart is breaking. This family's heart is breaking. And I do believe in the power of prayer, just like the Chief talked about this morning. But we have to know that what happened this morning or last night with this homicide right down the street in my council district, we have to realize that every shooting, every killing impacts somebody's family. It impacts our community. And I don't care how many police officers we hire and put on the streets, there's no way for a police officer to be in a home, but there are people in homes that know about these situations, that know that these people are going through challenges, and intervention is the key. But if we don't know what's going on, there's nothing that the police department can do about it either. We have to come together. I don't care if it's in your community, my community, Shenandoah, wherever, I don't care where it is. This is a city issue. It's not a community issue, because sooner or later it's going to creep into your neighborhood. So we've got to get together. A number of police officers on the street, that's fine. I'm all for more police officers, better pay for police officers, but police are not going to be everywhere in every situation in our community. But we are. We got to speak up. We got to say something if we know something. We cannot be afraid. We have to, because if we don't, this is going to continue to happen. My prayers go out to the family of this 2-year-old, for this community. We are better Baton Rouge, and we've got to do better. So let's try to work on this as a community and not try to make excuses. We have outrage when certain things happen in our community about deaths that occur. We got to be just as outraged about this one. Crime is crime, murder is murder, and it impacts every family and everybody across this city. So I'm imploring the Baton Rouge community, let's do better, because we are better. Thank you.
Amen. You know, when she said it, you think more than 50% when you look at the homicides that have actually happened inside the house or on the property. Over 50% of our homicides. So therefore, I'm going to close with this. Look, the men and women of the Baton Rouge Police Department are working. They are. And I support their efforts, and I know this community supports them. And I want you to know that we're doing everything to keep this community safe. Overall, we are seeing reductions in crime. Our challenges right now, but we're seeing increases, are in homicides, in shooting incidents, about 20% domestic related. But overall, crime is still down in the city of Baton Rouge. So I'm going to take questions right now.
Chief, that's not familiar with WBRPD.
Yes, sir.
Can you say whether Miles was related to the 2-year-old who passed away, and can you identify that 2-year-old?
We're not going to release that name of the 2-year-old. I'm not going to do that at this time. But I don't know if there's a relationship. But we do know that there was a relationship in some way, an association between the suspect that was arrested and someone related.
Do you know if any of the family members had alerted authorities or filed any sort of protective orders against Miles prior to him going on this alleged crime spree?
That I don't know. As you well know, we I believe it was around 2:40 something this morning when I received the email that he was taken in custody. I had just left the scene around 2 o'clock that morning, and they caught him shortly thereafter. So our detectives were still out and still are working right now. So this is still under investigation. We wanted to have this conference to brief you on what we know at this time. There will be a formal briefing with all those details, but it has not been presented to me yet.
Didn't you say both of the children were family members, or did I mishear you?
One was the one who was
A
kidnapped.
9-year-old, okay.
Yes.
And then the other one is somehow related to a member of his family?
There's an association between the suspect and someone involved in that house.
Chief Scotty Hunter with WAFB. Can you talk a little bit about specifically what family members, will they hear something or they know something, that something like this could happen, what they can do?
Sure. Well, Crime Stoppers. I mean, Crime Stoppers has been a great tool in helping us. But Crime Stoppers isn't just there to notify us when, a crime has happened and we're trying to find a fugitive and there's a reward. You can actually call Crime Stoppers to prevent crimes. Now, we do understand that there are challenges sometime when we talk about community police relations, but look, they're pastors, they're faith-based. There are organizations like Truce, which we are a partnership with to help us disrupt violence. But what we're seeing in a lot of these cases, the individuals who are responsible for these crimes, that they've communicated their intent prior to doing that. And they don't pick up the phone and call us, because I assure you we will address it. And you know, if they can find, and there's so many resources out there, they just have to believe in it. I would like for them to call law enforcement every time. You know, we will send a team of our intelligence persons out there to help disrupt that violence. We have success stories in our call-ins where we try to give those young individuals who are involved in group violence with not only jobs but other services to turn their lives around. You know, with our partnership with Truce, with Tyron Matthews, who's helping change the hearts of these young men, there are success stories. We just have to believe in it more, and we need parents, loved ones to pick up the phone and say, you know what, we need your help.
I know this was mostly about what happened overnight, but I also wanted to ask about the situation on Erie Street that happened earlier this week. The family said that that warrant that was served here was a botched job. Do you think that's a fair assessment?
Well, so what I've come to learn, and it is under investigation, we received a formal complaint from an attorney that's representing the family. I've communicated with that attorney via email correspondence when I received it. And we immediately initiated an internal investigation into the complaint and also a supervisor's review into the incident. So what we've come to learn so far was that the detectives got a warrant issued from a judge in a 19 JDC where he articulated his PC to get a search warrant. There were surveillance efforts and also documentation, which led the detective to believe that he resided, the wanted a person resided at that address. And that's what led them to that. Upon executing the search warrant, after going through what we call a risk assessment, we learned that the occupants in that residence don't know him, and that he no longer resided there. So efforts then began to make the appropriate repairs to the house. It could have been expedited a little bit more. But we're going to look at that, just like we look at any complaint that comes in. And areas that we can improve on, we will improve on it. We're going to look at our process and our procedures, and we're going to make those adjustments. And we tell the family, just like I said when I called, I'm sorry for that experience. He no longer resided at that house, even though the evidence that the detective had gathered led him to believe that.
Sure. And just to be clear, the family did not know him and also was not connected to him at all in any way, shape, or form. Speaking to that surveillance, can you say if your team actually saw him at that house, or if they just saw a car outside that looked like
So there was a vehicle. There was a vehicle at the residence, and that vehicle was the same description of the vehicle that was used in the shooting incident that he was wanted for, which happened. In that incident, I went to the hospital. A young girl was shot, and her mother were both shot in a car. I believe there was about 5 occupants in a car, and the child was shot, and the mother was shot. And that's what he was wanted for. And that actually happened during the daylight hours with a very large weapon.
Sure, and the family was very traumatized by this, obviously.
Yeah.
They mentioned that you did call them, and they
Yeah.
said that you apologized for that. But they told me that, obviously it was a 66-year-old woman that used the bathroom on herself during this situation. Do you think that I'm sorry and that we'll fix the doors enough?
Well, and they're lifted up in our prayers. They have an attorney. I respect processes, and we're going to respect that. But I spoke to him. If there's anything else that we can do, we'll lift him up in prayers. He no longer lived there. I can't speak in too much on it because obviously there's going to be litigation. They have an attorney that's represented. But no, my heart goes out for him. What if it was your parents? How would you feel if it was your house? Yeah, my heart goes out for him.
Chief, you issued a powerful statement last night about Sergeant Chris Kuhn, who resigned from the BRPD last week. Can you talk about the process of trying to remove his credentials?
We made the notification. There's a form that we fill out and complete and send it to Louisiana Commission on Law Enforcement for post, letting them know that there's a separation in service, that he resigned, and that we will continue our investigative efforts in compliance with our normal procedures, just to make sure that we didn't miss anything. And once that investigation is concluded, that it will be on file in Internal Affairs for review.
When you saw some of the messages, what went through your mind?
It was sad. I mean, obviously, there's no room for that type of language, those type of comments in law enforcement, but it was very concerning. I put a statement out when I learned. We immediately initiated an investigation, and you know, his resignation was best for the community. But no, there's no room for that in law enforcement, sir. No.
We understand that the union turned those messages over to the police department, and they were pushing for his resignation or termination. Can you recall a time when the union ever turned in an officer?
That's the first time since I've been here.
Should the public make anything of that, or?
It's the first time it's ever happened since I've been in this position, sir.
So just to clarify, that investigation is still ongoing, and there's no determination yet whether Chris Kuhn is in fact the person who is posting under that name?
It is still an investigation, things we have to look at. We're communicating with the district attorney's office to look at all cases where he was either a case agent or a witness officer or in other reporting officer to make sure we're dotting all our I's and crossing all our T's in that particular case. So once that final report comes across my desk, we will document that accordingly. But the final report has not been submitted to me yet.
To your point yesterday, though, he declined to do an interview with you guys.
That is correct. After numerous attempts, we tried several times. He exercised the law enforcement bill of rights, which gives him up to 30 days to get an attorney. So we were not able to complete that interview prior to him resigning. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank y'all.